It was an old town steeped in shadows and whispers. People barely spoke of it, an unspoken rule that every family in the region adhered to. Tucked away in the crevices of a forgotten valley, the town of Ravenshade seemed to exist in its own grim pocket of reality. It was as though the town was slowly decaying under a curse, losing pieces of itself to the encroaching darkness with each passing day. In the heart of the town was an abandoned cathedral. Its Gothic spires reached into the murky sky like claws, and its broken windows gaped like hollow eyes. No one dared to step inside. The place was known to be haunted by something far worse than ghosts. It was said to be the home of Angeles Mortis, a spirit as old as time, an angel of death who thrived on fear and suffering. Generations ago, people would offer prayers and sacrifices to keep Angeles Mortis at bay. The elders believed that as long as offerings were made, the angel would remain within the cathedral's confines. But times changed, and those traditions were forgotten. The last known sacrifice was over 50 years ago, made by a desperate mother who begged for her son's life. No one knew what became of her or her child afterward, but it was rumored that their screams still echoed within the cathedral walls. The town's reluctance to speak of its grim history only deepened the mystery. But one curious soul, a journalist named Lila Ross, was determined to uncover the truth. Drawn to Ravenshade by rumors of a deathly angel haunting the town, she was fearless or perhaps reckless. Armed with only a camera and a flashlight, Lila decided to investigate the cathedral herself. She arrived just after dusk, the sky painted in hues of deep red and bruised purple. The cathedral loomed before her like a beast waiting to pounce. Vines choked its stone walls, and the air around it was thick with an unnatural stillness. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door, it groaned like a creature in pain. The inside was a desolate void. Dust motes swirled in the beam of her flashlight, and the silence was oppressive. Lila felt as if she'd stepped into another world, a world devoid of light, of hope. The pews were broken, shattered under some unimaginable force. The altar, once a place of sanctity, was now a ruin covered in dark stains that looked suspiciously like dried blood. As she moved deeper into the cathedral, she noticed something strange. The temperature plummeted, and her breath formed misty clouds in front of her. The walls seemed to pulse, like a living thing, as if the entire structure was breathing. Lila's heart pounded in her chest, but she pressed on, the thrill of the unknown pushing her forward. She reached the center of the nave, where a massive circular mirror was propped against the wall. It was an odd relic, out of place amidst the ruin. The frame was intricately carved with images of angels, their faces twisted in expressions of agony. Despite the grime and dust, the surface of the mirror was pristine, reflecting Lila's pale face back at her with an unsettling clarity. As she stared at her reflection, something flickered behind her in the mirror, an indistinct shape, shrouded in shadows. Lila spun around, but there was nothing there. Heart racing, she turned back to the mirror, and her blood ran cold. A figure stood in the reflection, towering over her. It wore a tattered cloak that seemed to merge with the darkness around it. Where its face should have been was only a void, a hollow abyss that seemed to swallow the light. And yet, its gaze, if it had eyes, bored into her soul, paralyzing her with fear. "You should not have come here," a voice whispered, echoing through the vast cathedral. It was a voice like the rustling of dead leaves, like the final breath of a dying man. Lila backed away, but the figure in the mirror reached out, its hand a skeletal, talon-like appendage breaching the surface of the glass as if it were water. Lila stumbled, her scream caught in her throat as the hand grasped her wrist. Ice shot through her veins, and she was yanked toward the mirror. Desperately, she tried to pull free, but the grip tightened, crushing her bones. With a strength born of sheer terror, she managed to wrench herself away, falling to the cold stone floor. The mirror cracked, the shattering sound reverberating through the cathedral like a gunshot. The figure in the mirror twisted, its form warping and contorting in the broken shards. And then it spoke again, the words clawing at Lila's mind. "Leave, or I will claim you." She scrambled to her feet and ran, not daring to look back. She could feel the air thicken around her, hear the walls groan as if they were coming alive, trying to trap her within their grasp. Somehow, she made it to the door and flung it open, bursting out into the night. She didn't stop running until she was back in the town, gasping for breath, tears streaming down her face. The townspeople watched her with a mixture of pity and resignation. They knew. They had always known. "You saw it, didn't you?" an old man murmured, stepping forward. His eyes were clouded with age, but his voice was firm. "Angeles Mortis, it's awake again." Lila nodded, unable to speak. The old man sighed deeply, glancing back at the dark silhouette of the cathedral. "You brought it back. It will come for us now, one by one. It always starts with the one who dares to look upon it first." As if on cue, a bone-chilling scream tore through the night. Lila turned, her blood freezing as she saw the cathedral's door slowly creak open, and a dark shape slithered out, its form barely visible against the shadows. It moved with unnatural speed, disappearing into the maze of alleys and streets. And then the screams began, agonized, guttural sounds that no human should be able to make. Lila watched in horror as the town descended into chaos, people running, doors slamming shut. But there was no escape. One by one, the screams were cut off, replaced by an eerie silence that spread like a virus. And then, from the darkness, the figure emerged again. It stopped a few feet away from Lila, its head tilted as if studying her. "You are marked," it whispered, its voice a deathly caress. "You will join them soon." And then it was gone, leaving Lila standing alone in the deserted square, trembling with fear. She knew, deep in her bones, that it was only a matter of time before Angeles Mortis returned for her. She had awoken it from its slumber, and now it was free to roam the earth once more. Lila's story ended that night. When the townspeople finally dared to step outside, they found her standing before her eyes wide and unseeing, her face twisted in a rictus of terror. She was alive but utterly broken, a shell of the woman she once was. No one spoke of what happened. The town sealed itself off even further, the memory of Angeles Mortis buried deeper within the collective silence. But sometimes, when the night is still and the wind carries a chill, people swear they can hear a voice drifting from the cathedral whispering, laughing, calling out to those who dare to listen. And those who listen are never seen again.